Another day and another time that they are blaming China for what the United States is actually doing. This is your favorite half Chinese, and in the article of this one here, the foreignpolicy.com, they are blaming China's absence in other regions, military absence in other regions, for the wars that the United States is starting in all those regions. I think it is for a lot of people very hard to understand, but if you study a little bit of game theory, which I highly recommend people, I did the whole entire course of Yale's. I even bought all the books of them. Then you will understand why they think like this. The United States is playing a zero-sum game on behest of their capitalists, their so-called donors. It's not exactly the donors, but the ones who are behind it, right? And therefore, they feel the need that if they can cheat, then you should cheat. That is literally what we learn in game theory. If there's no punishment for cheating, you should cheat. So if there's no punishment for starting wars, you should start as many as possible to just do what they do, is rob the entire world, right? If there's no punishment, that is the good strategy to go. Anyway, did I already told you this is your favorite half Chinese? I don't know anymore. But this is the time to click that like button and also to think about one good thing. How does Mr. Fong keep awake every day making videos and editing? Well, I drink a lot of coffee. And therefore I have opened a Buy Me a Coffee for the people who also want to support my work. But you can only donate if you have more than enough money. The link will be in the description. If you don't have enough money, don't mind it. Just give me a like, share the video, and also subscribe. Don't forget to click the notification bell, and it will mean just as much to me as a nice cup of coffee. So let's just continue in why they are reasoning like that. So here they say, in fact, it is precisely China's lack of military presence in the greater Middle East that has lured the United States into war. They lured them into war by not being there. Just try to make that make sense. And obviously, for the normal minds, that totally doesn't make any sense because somebody needs to be present to lure another one, right? But we will come after it later. A similar US attack on Iran would not have been possible during the Cold War because Washington was then worried about a Soviet military response targeting US interest in the region. Right? So they're talking about there is no punishment or no chance on punishment from other forces which are equally as strong as us. Therefore, we're just going to attack anybody who we want and feel necessary to do to line the pockets of this 1% elite. Because that's what it is all about. It has nothing to do with stability. It has nothing to do with democracy. It has nothing to do with bringing peace or for the women of Iran. No, in fact, they are taking the lives of those women in Iran. Washington does not have any such concerns with regards to China in the Middle East, given Beijing's limited military power outside the Western Pacific. However, if Washington engages in conflicts in the Middle East or other parts of Eurasia that lie on the geopolitical periphery of the US-China rivalry, it risks strategic overreach and could damage its relationship with allies and its partners. And that is also what they will talk about later in the article. But what we learn here is a very simple strategy. What we learn is if somebody is letting you attack them continuously or let them cheat, if there's no punishment for cheating, then you should cheat every single time. If you are attacking them and they will not attack you back, then you should always attack them. That is literally game theory. But in the world of humans and other sentient beings, we should also maybe consider something that is called humanity. What we also should consider is another strategy, what you also will learn in these books. And that is cooperative games. And cooperative games will not gain or yield as much as to an individual, but it will yield more for everybody. And this is the whole entire problem. What we have in a capitalist nations is that it is not about everybody. It is only about the capital, and the ones who have the capital are very, very few. And that is also why in a capitalist nation, you always see people complaining about their democracy. That is because they don't have democracy, because the whole entire economic system evolves around just a few people who hold all the power and hold also the power over the governments. I hope people start to really think about these kind of things. I also have a video, a whole interview with Dr. Garrido. I hope everybody is going to watch it because it is really interesting. It is a little bit long, but just watch it in parts, all right? So this is what it is about. They think in their mind, which is a correct strategy. We used to also do it when I was still playing poker. If you are continuously re-raising me, then I know I'm being punished for not doing anything about it. So what I will do is re-raise you after that. And many times you will see that that person who's been so aggressive all of a sudden starts folding his hands. Now it is the time for me. This is the game that the United States is playing, right? Instead of thinking that we have one world and just forget about, oh, I'm an American, or I am an African, or I'm an Asian. We are all human beings, and we just have one world. Oddly enough, and sadly enough, we are all related to each other in some form, way, shape, or form. And that is what the United States always is forgetting. Here they go on. I just take a couple of other excerpts out of it. However, concerns that Beijing is leading an axis of evil or an axis of autocracy with Iran as a key member are exaggerated. So I'm glad that the article is being honest, because they have to, because they are making, they're analyzing something, and without saying this, they could not make their point. Beijing is in no position to dictate Tehran's or Moscow's policy towards the United States. I hope that people really listen to what the foreign policy actually is saying, is that China is in no position to dictate to anybody what they can or should do. And that is equally for the war happening in Ukraine. Often they also blame China for not telling Russia what to do. China has nothing over Russia that they can dictate Russia's foreign policy or Russia's domestic policy. Neither do they have that with Iran or any other nation. And the reason because that they don't have that is very simple. They don't want it. They have a non-interference policy. And I highly recommend you all to go and download or read it online, the Constitution of China, and just read the preamble, and there you already see that they're dictating to themselves that they will not interfere in other nations. And that is why you see a lot of absence of China in all these wars, right? And that is why it is that you should not call China to be an aggressive force, right? Beijing's main interests in the region are stability and economic cooperation. In fact, China opposes Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons for the very reason that it may create regional instability and give the United States and Israel an excuse to attack Iran. I'm not sure how much of that is actually true. I think that in this context that Beijing indeed does not want to have an Iran with nuclear weapons because of being afraid that they are going to be attacked. But I think, obviously I cannot speak for the government of China, but I think that will be changing, because obviously that would also be the first thing to change in my mind. In my mind now it is more better for Iran to have nuclear weapons in order to deter attacks on their sovereignty. So stability in the region will prevail, which is good for business. And in this context of China, they are thinking in the context of their businesses. And obviously, we know that once they would have nuclear weapons, then there is deterrence of instability. And that would be all great. So I'm not sure if they still would be against it. In addition to its own domestic oil production, China has built up substantial crude stockpiles, increasing them massively in 2025 amid global oversupply and low oil prices. That is a true thing, and China has indeed been stockpiling, and that is what they do. They are very, very good in seeing in the future what countries are going to do and what things are going to happen. They have very good strategies. I think that is also what they did. And they bought a lot of oil from Venezuela right before the United States kidnapped Maduro. Moreover, the oil crisis set off by Trump's war in Iran is hurting the US economy, which is heavily exposed to the global oil prices, as well as the economic of US allies, including Japan, South Korea, and NATO partners. And that is what they were talking about, that, yeah, it is not in the interest of all their partners. So they actually are weakening their own partners for the gain of a handful of capitalists. That might look really, really weird thing to do, but you also have to understand that their partners also fall under the umbrella of the ones that are really pulling the strings in the United States. And those are the exact same capitalists. Beijing has no interest in becoming embroiled in a US war in the Middle East, and there are good reasons to question the PLA's readiness to undertake such a large-scale mission from its home waters. Yet, this could not be interpreted as a sign of Chinese weakness. China's cautious approach to the ongoing debacle in the Middle East is simply a consequence of the geopolitical dynamics of US-China rivalry. It is also because, although China has a huge army, and I believe it's ranked 3 in the world, right? You have to understand that 80% is for defense and only 20% is for offense. So a lot of people always also come in my comment section that China needs to do this or that. They also need to have the capability for it, and they don't, right? They don't have the capability to have all military bases all surrounding Europe or the United States or whatever. This is not what they're doing. This is against their own policy. People need to understand China is a socialist nation. It is against imperialism. That is why you hardly see any military base. They have one in Djibouti for a peacekeeping mission, what is going on there. And it is together with other nations, right? They're not into the business of imperialism like the United States is. Anyway, I wanted to show you this. So while at the same time they're blaming China, they're also telling you not to be afraid of China. So it is quite interesting when you read these kind of articles that always oh well, not always, but they're always trying to blame China for something that they are doing themselves, but at the same time when they're doing that, like here they're telling you that China isn't aggressive, China doesn't want to have wars, China doesn't have military bases, so it's not a threat. But in other articles you will find that they will be saying that China is a military threat. So this is important, why you need to understand these kind of things and start to remember these kind of things, right? Like, oh, wait a minute, you're telling me, like for Europeans, you're telling me that China is a military threat, but they don't even have the military capability to come over here. What kind of military threat are they? Right? It's just normal, common sense. It's time for the people to wake up, especially for the Americans who really, really think that China is their military threat. Your own foreignpolicy.com is telling you that it cannot even be a military threat, not even if it wanted to. So I hope this was interesting for a lot of people, and I hope that this will clear up a lot of things. Let me know, what do you think of China getting the blame for a war that they didn't start? They also got the blame for the Ukraine war. Also another war that they didn't start and also were against. Just because they are not attacking or they are not having military presence there, because they are not exercising imperialism, that drives us, the United States, well, not us, I'm not from the United States, but according to them, that drives them to start this war. That's an insane mentality to think about, right? Because I can hurt you, so I must hurt you now. But again, that is literally what you learn in game theory. There is a free course on YouTube from Yale's courses or whatever. I would highly recommend you to go and follow it. It is our true colleges. They all have been recorded. And then you can also, if you want and also have the money, buy these books. This is to teach you how to strategize. And this other book is very interesting to read. All sorts of different strategies in business and military. And I would highly, highly, highly recommend you to look into these things if you are interested in politics and business, because you can use it in both ways. Anyway, this is not a promo. It's just what I did myself. And that is why I understand how the United States think. Not that I agree with them, but you must understand the other party. So go ahead and study. It's all for free, except the books. But it is a gem if you just do that, and you will just enlighten yourself more and more. And you will start to understand why they are doing this. Because if a normal person is reading this, they're like, oh, yeah, but why would we attack them if China is or isn't there? That doesn't make any sense. But if you understand these kind of strategies, then it makes a whole lot of sense, right? Anyway, I'm not saying that it is good or bad or whatever. I'm just trying to explain to the people why these things are happening and what is actually the driving force behind it. Well, the driving force behind all these wars are the capitalists, and that's it. Anyway, let me know in the comment section what you all thought of this, and please keep it respectful. But yeah, that was it. Have a great day. Your favorite half Chinese.